On this edition of the program, we hear from the Smokey Back Room and the Kamala Money Bomb and how you can determine whether or not you're being scammed by political advertisements for money. The Money Man, Dave Levinthal, on the show. It's all coming up. Hello and welcome everybody to the Politics program for August 2nd, 2024, the Friday edition. It's your old pal Justin Robert Young joining you from Austin, Texas. Now, for those of you who are not aware, the Smokey Back Room was a term used through the earlier part of the 20th century to describe party stakeholders, donors, and luminaries in a political party. They were traditionally the people that at a convention would eventually put their thumb on the scale and decide who was going to represent each party. And I gotta say, I've always loved that era of politics, and it's the reason why I decorated my YouTube set the way that I've decorated it. It's got a retro aesthetic that feels like one of those old hotel ballrooms that the Smokey Back Room would meet in. And maybe it's because we have an appreciation that I've been told to read the following from the Smokey Back Room, and I will do so now. Cheers to the Smokey Back Room. We're back. Yes. You might have thought we were gone, and we were for a while, but when you needed us the most, we were there. I mean, what's the point of primaries? They're expensive, they're dangerous, they're messy. All they do is expose the candidates that you love to attacks that they shouldn't hear until the fall. Since 1968, when you guys insisted on making the primaries the end-all be-all of how we decide the nominee, what did you get? Carter, big winner there. Mondale, that went great. Dukakis, boy, you guys sure can pick them. Okay, credit where credit is due. The primaries found Clinton, but we would have found him anyway. We would have gotten to him. We would have thrown Gore overboard the second he said lockbox. Kerry is a stiff who should only be spoken to if you're telling him to ask his wife for money. Obama was a winner, but Hillary should have been sent to do volunteer work in Haiti when she stumbled on everything in 2008. And don't get me started on Biden. Sure, he won, but it was COVID, and he poured in a storm, I guess. You know, especially if that storm is Bernie Sanders. Got to keep him away. But with all of your efforts, Biden 24, yeah. When you were up to your neck in democracy, with all your free will wrapped around your throat, who'd you turn to? Us, the Smokey Back Room. And it was a bit of a rush job. Almost didn't happen. How do you get the donors, the party elders, and the major stakeholders all in one room before the convention? Well, luckily, it's 2024. Everyone works remote. The Smokey Back Zoom Room. But when you needed us, we sprung into action. We cut off the money. We hammered him with various different statements. And then, according to Seymour Hersh, we threatened the old boy with a 25th Amendment. But who believes him? Here's the point. The room ain't nothing to laugh at. Just ask Tommy Wiseau. Look what we gave you. Look what we gave you. We gave you Kamala. We gave you the coconut heads. Draw a Venn diagram to show how happy you are. Her polls are phenomenal. She's making swing states competitive. And all you had to do was nothing. Door-to-door service. It's Uber for representative democracy. And I'm glad that you guys have finally wisened up and put us back in charge. Why did the history books give us a bad rap? Because we dedicated our lives to the party? Because we spend our hard-earned money giving you the candidates you want? And so we are reaching the smartest audience in political podcasting, the PX3 crowd. And here is our pitch. Let us take it from here. It's clear that you guys don't mind. Forget all these primaries. We'll get together at the convention in 2028 and we will decide who we want, and you guys will be happy about it. Because let's be honest, when something like this happens again, we're just going to do it anyway. This is your update brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. That's where you can get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. One on Sunday afternoon, Monday morning for all of your morning commute needs. A late edition on Thursday. You love to see it. We'll talk a little bit more about it. Let's get into the news first. In a heated interview at the National Association of Black Journalists Convention, Donald Trump fiercely criticized ABC's Rachel Scott and insinuated that Vice President Kamala Harris had altered her racial identity for political gain. He staunchly defended his supporters involved in the January 6th Capitol riot and claimed to be the best president for Black America since Abraham Lincoln. The 34-minute session was unexpectedly cut short by Trump's campaign, leaving the audience surprised. Trump repeatedly clashed with the moderators and questioned Harris's racial background, prompting swift condemnation from White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre. 2016 is back, baby. 2016 is back. There were a lot of thoughts about how the super disciplined President Trump would handle a little bit of a rocky road. He really hasn't been punched so far in this campaign. He's been punched now. The numbers for Kamala are good. The fundraising numbers are good. He is getting buried on his vice president. And Donald Trump does what Donald Trump does. He walked into a room and made the entire day about him. Obviously, it's going to galvanize his hardcore support. It is going to enrage those who hate him. The question I have is, who is this appealing to that wouldn't already be in Donald Trump's favor? And ultimately, it gets us into the central question of Donald Trump. Is his superpower making everything about him, or is his biggest weakness making everything about him? After following this journey for damn near 8 years now, I don't know if I know the answer. I would say that in general, what the Trump campaign is focusing on is, look, he's going into tough rooms, getting ripped to shreds with tough questions and standing and delivering. So you might not like every answer that he has, but you know he's being honest, and you know that Kamala Harris would never walk into a room where she didn't have the answer to every single question before she opened her mouth. And by the way, we're still waiting for Kamala Harris's first interview, friendly or no. That's what the Trump campaign is saying. The Harris campaign is saying, you just let loose a quote that Kamala isn't really black, that she was Indian until she decided she was black. That's embarrassing. That's humiliating. You also said that you would pardon January 6th rioters even if they attacked police. We're going to use that one in a few ads. Heads up. We're going to use that one in a few ads. And so we're back to 2016. The Trump whirling dervish is out there. He is going to talk to more media than you. And the Democrats believe, with their female candidate running a very media-averse strategy, that Trump will irradiate himself. Now, the difference between Hillary and Kamala is that you've already got a lot of the book on Trump. There's not much of an excitement factor of what he might do. But on the other side, he's the safe candidate now. The thing with Trump is just always going to be him. There's no way around it. The only question that you really have from a campaign perspective is how much you want to turn on the faucet and how much you want of him to come out. This was a pretty large dose because you were sending him out there against hostile questioners that were essentially asking the same version of the Megyn Kelly question from 2016. You know, the first question that sent everything down the very antagonistic rabbit hole was ABC's Rachel Scott saying, you did racist thing, racist thing, racist thing, racist thing, racist thing. Why are you such a racist? I think to be fair to her, the actual question was, why do you expect black support after you've done that? And he took umbrage to that and then lashed out. So we're back. We're back to 2016. Moving on, the assassination of Hamas's top political leader in Tehran has heightened fears of a broader conflict and dampened hopes for a hostage release deal to end the Gaza war. The killing of Ismail Haniyeh, coupled with an Israeli attack on the Hezbollah leader in Lebanon, occurred shortly after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's visit to Washington. Although Israel has not claimed responsibility for the death of Hamas's leader in Tehran, Iran blames Israel for the pre-dawn airstrike. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken denied American involvement and reiterated the U.S. focus on achieving a ceasefire, securing the release of 115 Israeli hostages, and addressing the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The death, while not a major blow to Hamas's leadership, will likely throw a wrench into whatever ceasefire negotiations were ongoing. I don't know where the peace process is. Whatever peace process we are in the middle of right now, I think we need new people involved in it. And I would say that from the American perspective. I don't know why we are negotiating or trying to mediate a negotiation between Hamas and Israel. The person that would be agreeing to anything like that is Yahya Sinwar. He's in a basement in Gaza somewhere, and he is perfectly fine with either dying as a martyr or staying alive so Israel kills more civilians in Gaza and therefore advances their jihadist cause. The solution to this is going to come from the people that fund Hamas. And so either you put carrot or stick pressure on Qatar or Iran. And this is from somebody who doesn't know anything about anything. I just know that the strategy that we are moving on now has not yielded any results for anybody. It has not yielded results from the perspective of somebody who just wants the violence to stop in Gaza, even if it means preserving the leadership structure of Hamas. It has not worked out for Israel if what you want is to dismantle Hamas and get the hostages home. This has not worked. So now you have the Hezbollah attack from Lebanon that has the retaliatory strike in Beirut. And now you have a Hamas leader in Tehran that gets taken out with Israel showing, hey, look, we will touch you. We will touch you where you are. I don't know what's going on here, but boy, do I not feel great about it. It feels unstable. And, you know, these wars in the Middle East don't end. It's just a matter of exactly how much the allies of those in the Middle East are going to back them. And, yeah. Finally, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell signaled the potential for the central bank's first rate cut in 4 years, citing progress in lowering inflation and a cooling job market. The Fed kept its key interest rate at 5.3, but suggested a rate cut might occur in September if inflation continues to decrease. Despite this, the decision faced calls for immediate cuts, as some economists and politicians say that they are needed. The Fed aims to balance controlling inflation, now at 2.5% month on month, and avoiding a recession as unemployment has risen to 4.1%. Financial markets expect the Fed to reduce rates in September, a move that would lower borrowing costs and support economic growth. The Fed's cautious approach reflects concerns over inflation and maintaining economic stability. 3 Democratic senators, including Elizabeth Warren, have urged for rate cuts to avoid political implications, highlighting the need to respond to changing economic conditions. We'll see. But that's it for your update. If you would like to support this show, you can go to takepoliticsseriously.com. At takepoliticsseriously.com, you get not 1 but 2 bonus episodes each and every week if you sign up at the $3 level. More than ever, this has been a popular decision. And as we move into the busy season, under 100 days, making our way to Labor Day when traditionally it's go time, well, it's a good time to sign up. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. And now, to the money man, Dave Levinthal. A new day has dawned. Kamala Harris is the Democratic nominee by way of a virtual roll call, and the money is flowing. And so we have to bring in the money man, Dave Levinthal. Raw story. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. Pleasure to be with you, as always, Justin.
And it was great spending some fun nights in Wisconsin at the RNC. Looking forward to the DNC, as well as the media gathers together for our own little fun time and picnic. Let's talk about the gigantic money fountain that has erupted underneath Kamala Harris. How much of this was the money being cut off for Biden that is now showing up? How much of this is enthusiasm? I'd imagine it's a little bit of both, but as you've seen these cycles come and go for a while, what is your sense of it?
My sense of it is that none of this would have happened but for Joe Biden stepping down. So all the money, all the interest, the influx of cash would not have been possible without Kamala Harris. And part of that just serves to reason. I mean, I think a lot of Democrats were of course, looking for a reason to get excited at any level. And we really saw this, Justin, on 2 ends. The first end was kind of the predictable end, which was the big dollar donations that some folks had kind of held back and had not necessarily been enthusiastic about giving $1 million or $5 or $10 million. I mean, you think of somebody like Reid Hoffman, the LinkedIn founder, and a few others who really just seemed to be energized about this in a way that, again, would not have been possible if Joe Biden had stayed in the race, or at least they weren't willing to. But the other end of that, of course, is the small dollar donations. And let's just step back a few weeks. After that debate a month ago, small dollar donations were drying up for Joe Biden. I mean, things were looking pretty bleak for his campaign. Donald Trump was financially ascendant. Joe Biden was going underwater. And ultimately, they were looking and staring down a rush to election day where the amount of available cash they were going to be at a disadvantage, which is almost kind of unthinkable for an incumbent president of the United States who is seeking a second term, not somebody who is out of office, who had 88 felony charges pending against him, or 34 of those which he had actually been found guilty on. I mean, all the chips are stacked in Joe Biden's favor, and yet the money was not. So, you add that up together and it paints a picture, bottom line, of Kamala Harris being truly the X factor, Y factor, Z factor of money,
Yeah.
and that money flowing in. One critical caveat, though, huge numbers are being thrown around, and I suspect we're going to get into this a little bit, but not all that money is directly going to her campaign. It's something that she can say, hey, look, I raised $250 million or around there about, but that some of that money is going to go and be directly controlled by Harris for president, and a lot of that money is not necessarily going to be directly controlled by Harris for president.
So let's get into that. Number one, the first question that was asked as we talked about the concept of Joe Biden not being at the top of the ticket was who gets the money that was raised during that process. We have now seamlessly completed that, right? It is just now Harris for president, and the bank accounts remain the same.
For all intents and purposes. Now, so the easy way to explain this, the non-legal, non-technical way to explain this is Kamala Harris was on the ticket, okay? Joe Biden's campaign was her campaign for all intents and purposes. Joe Biden leaves, Harris slots in, everything seemingly is done. Now, there's always a complication. There's always some controversy, and the controversy that materialized was the idea around, well, wait, if Joe Biden as a presidential candidate had raised that money, there's some kind of interesting semi-vague provisions in federal laws to whether Kamala Harris would actually be entitled to that money. There have been some Republicans and conservatives who have said, no, actually she shouldn't be just simply able to take over that money that was raised under the idea that Joe Biden was running for president. She should have to re-raise that money, or the money that Biden has should have to be jettisoned somewhere else to the DNC or given to a super PAC, and Harris would have to start from ground zero. Now, none of that seems to be holding any legal weight here. There has been a complaint filed with the Federal Election Commission, but that is something that there's almost a 0% chance will be solved and resolved by the time the election comes about, because FEC complaints, first of all, they take oftentimes 2, 3, 4, 5 years to ultimately get solved, and something as complex and high stakes as this question. Your listeners know the FEC is like molasses.
Nothing's going fast.
A rocket sled compared to what happens at the FEC sometimes. So if anyone's worried that there's going to be some October surprise where Kamala Harris is suddenly going to be broke because the FEC had some ruling, forget about it. Just not realistic. No.
So of that gigantic amount of money that comes in, and you have pointed out that the top line numbers are nearly $250 million. How much has gone to her, and how much has gone to PACs? And effectively, based on what they can do with this, what is the difference?
So we're not going to know real numbers for a little while yet. We're not going to really know until August as to sort of the initial finances and how they all shook up. And that'll be dropping on August 20th with the Federal Election Commission, right literally in the guts of the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. So to answer your question with a non-answer, we don't exactly know yet. But when we do know next month, I suspect that you're going to see a division, maybe by thirds, maybe by something else, where some of that money that Kamala Harris is taking credit for, you're going to have a good portion of it. I mean, tens of millions of dollars, maybe even something stretching into the 9 figures that is going to be going directly to her campaign. I mean, she, any way you cut this, Justin, raised an extraordinary amount of money in an incredibly short period of time. If you take those numbers at face value, or not even quite at face value, it's still going to be just an absolutely crazy, nonsensical dollar figure for what we know to be de rigueur, status quo, standard stuff for this stage in a presidential campaign, which is already like bonkers numbers to begin with. But, it just speaks to the energy, and it speaks to the just almost the pent-up desire and appetite for people to give, but being reluctant to give because they were just so demoralized by the trajectory that Joe Biden was on, which obviously was down, 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 down. So where else is it going to go? Well, it can definitely go to the Democratic National Committee, and the Harris campaign and the Democratic National Committee, just like the Trump campaign and the Republican National Committee, are incredibly closely aligned. They are more or less, one in the same for many material reasons and ways. So that is going to be sort of part of their joint fundraising effort. Where it starts to get a little interesting is that some of the money that gets raised may not go to either. It may actually go to state party committees. There's all sorts of like exotic ties and setups and situations where a presidential campaign can take in a big dollar amount of money. It will take what it legally can keep, which right now for an individual, if anyone gives a donation, makes a donation to the Harris campaign or the Trump campaign, they can only give $3,300 toward the general election campaign. So, well, how do you give more? Where does that money go? Well, that extra money can go to the Democratic National Committee if you're a Harris donor. That money can go to a whole constellation of state party committees that also too can benefit from a big donation and work on behalf of the Harris campaign or in service to the Harris campaign. But also too, some of that money is going to supportive super PACs. And super PACs, the 10-second definition is these are committees that are nominally independent of Kamala Harris or Donald Trump or whoever the candidate is, but can support them in direct fashion, okay? And so long as they're not like sitting down at a boardroom table, charting out and plotting strategy together, they pretty much can do almost anything we want. And we just saw Anita Dunn support Kamala Harris through a super PAC that is there supporting Kamala Harris. And she's an incredibly close advisor and confidant for Joe Biden. She's leaving the White House to go to the super PAC. So I think that's sort of the latest, greatest, best iteration and explanation of how the super PAC candidate nexus works right now. It's truly a revolving door. You can go back, you can go forth. There's no legal ramifications. So even though super PACs are not exactly wholly owned subsidiaries of a presidential campaign, they're basically just in the next step.
They are a way that you can raise unlimited funds, essentially, that are technically not allowed to communicate as long as it's not on an unlisted Google Doc.
And that is their superpower, that they can raise unlimited amounts of money and spend unlimited amounts of money.
I think we could probably add the caveat, as we did when Trump was convicted and there was a gigantic waterfall of money, that we should not be surprised if by the time that we get actual announcements on this kind of stuff, that it is not exactly what it was before, and especially considering what we'd seen with Biden, where you had donors publicly saying that they were going to pause donations either to super PACs or to the campaign, that some of this in the effort of getting a gigantic number to show that the party was very, very coalesced, might be double counting things that had previously already been pledged, right?
Absolutely. And we have seen this time and time again. We've talked in the past about Nikki Haley, for example, during the early days of her presidential campaign on the Republican side against Donald Trump, literally double counting numbers. So right now, because we don't have real-time disclosure for this type of campaign finance accounting, they can get silly with this stuff. They can use fuzzy math all they want. And really, a month from now, are people going to be going back and looking through the archives of Washington Post and Open Secrets articles, trying to parse exactly who said what and match that up to what in reality is happening with the money? I mean, you have to be really, really, really nerdy, and that includes you and me and probably some people listening right now, but 99.9999% of the population, they are not going to care click and pay attention. So, I mean, the overall strategy here is very effective for these campaigns to put out the biggest, baddest, craziest, wackiest number that you possibly can, make it as sexy as you possibly can get it, and then, kind of let the details take care of themselves in the wash.
Yeah, let's remember that Joe Biden was putting out press releases about highest amount of fundraising right before he was forced out of the race by his own party and his donors. So let's just understand this is a world of PR. One last thing on this race, and then I want to get to something else. The cash gap seemed to have flipped toward the end of Joe Biden's run in this race, where Trump now had a cash gap on his campaign based on any and all public tracking of this. Do we have a sense of what that was before this, just so we can keep any kind of equilibrium to see where it's going to go from there?
Yeah, the last numbers that we had where we truly could make an apples to apples comparison was at the end of June. So we're talking just a couple days after the disastrous debate that Joe Biden had, which incredibly helped Trump. We had, of course, the conviction of Donald Trump that resulted in a huge influx of money for him. And we had seen basically the gap open up, and we're talking millions of dollars here, not tens and tens of millions of dollars, but it was a noticeable departure from what we had seen through pretty much the rest of the campaign, which is that Joe Biden was maintaining a cash on hand lead over Donald Trump. But yeah, Donald Trump had basically gone above Joe Biden by the end of June. Now, what's going to be fascinating is to see how that gap probably continued. I would imagine continued to increase during the course of July, as the Democrats basically had open warfare with themselves over whether Joe Biden should stay in the race or drop out of the race. And, you know, talk about wacky PR. I mean, you and I, we were both at the Republican National Convention. I went to a Democratic availability where Joe Biden's principal deputy campaign managers, like, he is staying in the race. He is absolutely going to be on the ticket. He is not leaving. He will be there in November. He will beat Donald Trump. And 48 hours later, Joe Biden is out of the race. So, you know, people can say anything. They can try to convince you that red is blue and blue is red and up is down and vice versa. But, you know, that's just part of the game. And nobody really remembers that right now either. So, you know, let's be real about what these campaigns are both trying to do.
All right. So that is the news, as it were. I want to have another conversation because it's something that me and you were texting about during some of the craziest moments after the debate, during that period of time, because I had a suspicion that Joe Biden, in an effort to shore up support and to throw out some of those PR numbers, wanted to show a big push in small dollar donations and was hitting his text list and his email list harder so they could juice that a little bit. And me and you got back and forth about not only what was happening on the Biden side, but also some of the other text messages that I'm sure I am, like many Americans and many people that are listening to this right now, you are inundated with various different text message campaigns that come in, email campaigns that come in, that are all purporting to support either Donald Trump or now Kamala Harris from one side or the other. Now, not all of these actually do that. Many of these are indeed just out and out scams. And so what I would love to do with you here, Dave, is to help us walk through, if one gets one of these text messages, where they can go to just look and see who this organization is and some telltale signs of ones that are not actually spending this money to do what you want to do, and therefore allows you, the listener, some news you can use to faithfully unsubscribe without ever having any political guilt on your shoulders, whether or not you support their cause. You will just know this is a grifter and they should not be in your lives going forward. So where should somebody go, and how do they identify what to even look for in the first place?
Above all, before you pass go, before you collect $200, or for that matter, spend $200 of your hard-earned cash, read the fine print. And that applies to text messages that you receive. That applies to emails that you receive. That applies to phone calls that you might get. And you can certainly ask for the fine print. And if you don't get it, then hang up the damned phone, because there are so many scammers, there are so many grifters, there are so many semi-legitimate political action committees out there or political groups out there that may nominally be supportive of a certain candidate, but are kind of presenting themselves as being the candidate's committee or working directly with the candidate, but that's not really the case when it comes down to it. I just got a text message last hour It was all about Kamala Harris. It was all about her campaign and support her, and she's there for women, and on, on and on. You click the link, it's not Kamala Harris's campaign. It's not the Democratic National Committee. It's it's rather a traditional political action committee that is seemingly liberal. There's not a whole lot of paper on it. What I can tell you is when you go, for example, to the Federal Election Commission's website and look it up, or even better and more user-friendly, a plug for my friends over at Open Secrets, the nonpartisan nonprofit that tracks money in politics, you find out that the overhead for this particular political committee is incredibly high, that they spend most of their money not on political things, but on people who are serving as consultants or who are doing fundraising for them or whatever the case may be. You're going to see this a lot. So, look, these political committees, whether
okay,
they are
so
totally
let's say,
legit,
all right, here, yeah, all right, hold on. Let's stop here because I don't want to. I want to walk people through this step by step because I want people to be able to do this. I want to build up everyone's muscle memory for this, one step at a time. So the first thing is look for the name of the organization, right? So I was just literally going through my text messages. I've gotten 3 text messages over the last 3 days. One purportedly from Kamala Harris, one purportedly from Bill Clinton, and one purportedly from Kamala Harris. I click the link. It brings me to an Act Blue page for the Harris Victory Fund. Now, if I want to make sure that the Harris Victory Fund is indeed Kamala Harris, I would then go to Open Secrets and I would search for Harris Victory Fund, right?
Do your homework, search for the Harris Victory Fund, or you can go, if you want to go to the ultimate primary source, go to fec.gov and do the same thing. It's a little less user-friendly. The functionality is not going to be quite as good, but you can actually see the organizational documents. And what is the Harris Victory Fund? Well, the Harris Victory Fund is something called a Joint Fundraising Committee, a JFC, which, may be an acronym that means other things to other people in the context of politics and beyond. But, these are committees that you can create if you're a political candidate committee, and you can glom on other political committees. So when we were talking earlier, Justin, about, oh, well, if you make a big donation, some's going to go to the candidate, some's going to go to the party and state party committees. These joint fundraising committees, these JFCs, serve as sort of almost like a clearinghouse or a conduit for having big sums of money get parceled out to all different sorts of committees that are aligned with each other, but are individual entities unto themselves.
Okay, so we are assuming that is indeed the joint the joint fundraising committee for which would support Kamala Harris.
If I give money, you can take that to the bank.
If I give money to that, it is going to at least get sucked up by the official consultants that are mooching off that campaign, as opposed to just grifters that are wandering through the countryside. Now, let me look at another one. Democratic Congress. So this is another text message that I got. Kamala is surging, but with 100 days until Election Day, we must act 7x match to boost Dems to victory. This is from Dem Congress. If I go to Open Secrets and I search for Democratic Congress, that brings me to an organization, Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, employees, or outside spending group, Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. Like, how do I even find who is texting me when it just is Dem Congress? Demcongress.org.
So,
I guess I can just go to that website.
I got the same one too. We can do this live. So we can go ahead and
we're going to do it live.
Kamala is surging, but with 100 days until Election Day, we must act 7 times match. I think this may be very similar one. You go to
That's it. We got the same one.
We literally do. And you get a website. Okay, great. So Democratic Congress, that's actually not the name of the political action committee behind all of this. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, you will see under like 7 donate buttons and give this and give that and donate and big red blocky bars to donate. It says paid for by Democratic Victory PAC Incorporated and not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. Well, that's a tell right there. When you look
Okay.
at the fine print, that means that this is not actually part of the Kamala Harris committee. And if you make a donation to quote unquote help Kamala Harris and Democrats nationwide win, that may not necessarily be untrue, but the suggestion here is that you are giving to the Harris campaign. Well, the fact is you're not giving to the Harris campaign. So what should you do next? You should
Yes.
copy Democratic Victory PAC, type it into Google if you want to, but better yet, go to the FEC at fec.gov or Open Secrets at opensecrets.org. And
Okay.
you should,
We have found a Democratic Victory PAC 2024.
yes. And if
On-
you go ahead.
Yeah, so we have found that on Open Secrets, Democratic Victory PAC. Now, what am I looking for here?
So you will go to Open Secrets, and there's a profile for Democratic Victory PAC, and you can look at a whole variety of different things. I'm just looking right now at PAC expenditures, which means how is this
That's what
group
we
actually
need.
spending money that you give it. So if you give this group, out of the goodness of your true blue Democratic heart, $1,000 or $100, where's it going to go to? Well, Open Secrets does a really nice
Yes.
thing. They actually break down the money that this group has already spent, and they classify it. And they say, all right, if you donate that $100, where's your money going to go to? Well, according to Open Secrets, about 35% or $35, for the sake of argument around that $100, is going to go to, quote unquote, unclassifiable expenses. That doesn't seem so great.
Now, would you, as somebody that follows this kind of stuff, say that the largest expenditure from your group being unclassifiable is normal or good or efficacious to elect people that you are spending the money to do?
I mean, at minimum, Justin, it should raise a big, giant, honkin' yellow caution or red stop flag. Okay.
Gotcha.
So you may not necessarily want to proceed just given that, but it gets better. About 30%, 29.1% of that $100, so $29, in addition to that unclassifiable $35, goes toward fundraising. So money that is spent to raise money. And well, where's that going? It's going to consultants. Okay, so people who are getting paid to do this work. Now we're getting into some interesting territory. That means that already out of the gate, you're talking about 2/3 of the money that this PAC is spending this election cycle is going to either things that we don't know or fundraising. Okay, that's not supporting Democrats or Kamala Harris or anything at all. It's going to consultants and things that nobody can explain. Okay, so
and by the way, this is and just to give a sense of the money here, that because we are talking about it in percentages, and that means that the majority of the money that you have spent now goes to either unclassifiable or you are paying for the people that are running the text message and email campaigns and websites. Hopefully, right? They are charging whatever they are charging. Let's assume they are doing their job, but the majority of it is there. But we are talking about over $2 million in this cycle alone for either of those two expenditures.
Absolutely. And the hits keep coming here because you got about 8%, $8 going to things called campaign expenses, kind of fuzzy here. Media, 6%, administrative costs, almost 5%, strategy and research, almost 4%. So somebody might be fairly asking here right now, Justin, well, wait. What percentage of money is actually going toward politicians we're trying to elect, Democrats we want to get in office? Well, a big whole 12.2% of the money that this PAC has spent over the course of the campaign is going toward contributions. So a little more than $1 in $10 is going to support political candidates directly. So this is just me talking, but we get into the realm of the ill-defined term scam PAC at this point in time. It sounds like this PAC relative to other PACs out there that support Democrats or Republicans or anyone else that are legit operations, or certainly candidate committees that are the real McCoy and the genuine article, this is not that. And yet at the same time, when you get that text message, and let's go back to the beginning, it sure seems like your $100, most of that is going to go to support Kamala Harris and people that support Kamala Harris. The reality is nothing of the sort. So, you gotta do your homework, and we had to spend 2 minutes or 5 or a little bit more actually walking through that. But if you care about your money, if you care about where it's going to be spent, and especially if you're making a expenditure of your own that's going to matter to you, that you could be, especially if you're pinching pennies, but you want to support a Democratic cause or whatever the case may be, you will be very disappointed if you lose that money and it's basically going into the pocket of somebody who runs a political text messaging firm. Okay, you're probably going to be pretty pissed off, and yet this happens all the time. So it is a buyer beware situation when it comes to commerce. It is definitely a political spender beware situation when it comes to this kind of stuff.
If you were to just give some kind of Mendoza line of where that contribution percentage should be, or is often, because we're not suggesting that these organizations don't have any overhead, but maybe when 12% of it is a contribution and the rest of it is for various different administrative costs, that is too much. So a contribution percentage on a healthy organization should be what?
So, well, first of all, if you want to give directly to a candidate, there's a very easy way to do this. You give directly to the candidate.
Yes.
And you just figure out who that candidate is. You figure out what your official committee is. The FEC and Open Secrets will absolutely be the arbiter of that. You can go to their own webpage, make that donation there. And this is true, again, for Democrats and Republicans both. That's the way you make a political donation that goes 100% to that candidate, the end. Now, that's very straightforward. Once you get to other political committees, and there are some, political committees that are spending 60, 70, 80% of their money and giving that directly to candidates, or running advertising campaigns that are directly supportive of candidates. Those are sort of traditional, genuine political expenses that nobody's going to quibble with, okay? I would say that once you get kind of past the 50% line where expenses are not going toward those two buckets or going into those two buckets, direct support of political candidates, or media or communications in advocacy of those candidates, then you start to ask some questions about, well, all right, what exactly is going on here with this committee, and where is my money going when I give them money to support their cause? And there's no perfect
all right,
answer.
So there we go. I think that there is very obviously a easy step to follow. Find out the real name of the organization that is texting you or emailing you. Buy at their website. They have to list it at the bottom at some point. Look them up. See what those percentages are. Give accordingly. And I would say probably, I'm going to say this, not Dave. Just, if all you want to do is give to the candidate, just give to the candidate. Just go to their website. Just give to the candidate. That's it. There's very little, unless you extraordinarily believe in some personality or some, a big-brained organization that is going to buy strategic media things that they can do and say things that you believe in, then just give to the candidate. If that's what you want to do, it's very simple to do. All of this has been flattened out over the past 15 years, where now no private organization is doing things any different than the campaigns are. They're all running on Act Blue and Win Red anyway. So just go do that.
And if I can add just one radical idea to the equation here, and going back to the text message that we both received, how did we get on that list?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll tell you how we got on that list. We got on that list because we likely signed up for some email list for some candidate or some political party to get their messages, to track it, to read what's being said. And your email address, my email address, but especially donors' email addresses for anyone who makes a donation, that information and all that comes with it, including your email address, your home address if you have it, your phone number, all of your personal information. It can be bought, it can be sold, it can be rented, it can be traded, and it can go just about anywhere. Data brokerages, list traders, I mean, it's a whole industry unto itself. So the radical idea here, Justin, is if you want to make a political contribution and not even go to the webpage except to get information on how to make a donation, amazing as it is, you can still write a paper check and candidates will accept it. You can always do that.
You can always do that. You can always do that.
I don't
And
know
you
if
can
anyone
always
has paper check to write, but that's the thing.
You can always listen to and support the great Dave Levinthal of Raw Story. Thank you so much for coming on. This is some real good news you could use stuff. I'm really glad that people are going to get this because they are going to be underwater with these text messages from here to November. So thank you very, very much. Where can people find more of your work?
Well, you can go to rawstory.com. You can email me directly. It's levinthal@rawstory.com. That's Levinthal at rawstory.com. Always happy to answer questions. We didn't even get a chance to talk about like the new cryptocurrency super PAC that materialized out of nowhere and is spending like, more than $100 million. I mean, some crazy stuff going on this election cycle. Always happy to give you answers.
And if the last month is any indication, we are going to be through the looking glass at any minute now with the craziness. Thank you so much for joining us,
there's
brother.
like 72 looking glasses that we're already through, and we got 100 days left.
I know. We are in a funhouse mirror maze of looking glasses at this point. By the time that we get to election day,
in the 17th dimension. Yep.
And that'll wrap it up for us today. Politics, written and hosted by me, Justin Robert Young, for Dog and Pony Show Audio in Austin, Texas. Big thank you to Dave Levinthal for joining us. If you'd like to send me an email, it is theyoungamerican@gmail.com. You can find me on social media, Justin R. Young on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. You can get our YouTube. Everything we do is visual now. It is visual now. Politics is where you need to go. And you can share this podcast, px3podcast.com. Support us with a one-time donation, paypal.me/payjury. Venmo is Justin-Young-20. Cash App is PX3Cash. And you can send us anything you'd like in the mail. P.O. Box 153184, Austin, Texas, 78715. You can always get our bonus content at TakePoliticsSeriously.com. $3 tier gets you 2 bonus podcasts per week covering all the news that we miss on our free podcasting schedule. But our $10 tier gets your name read in the Titanic $10 tier. TP, David Potts, Nicholas, Whiskey Wolf, Sparky from Stevens, Florida, Will Porta, SingleTreeTravel.com, Fat Tony's PJs from New York, Devon the CFP, Gloria, Grayzone, Peepaw, Jay, Sugar Brady, Marcus with a Q, DP4 Bongo, Sam, John, Niemeister, Edwin, and vote Gloria Young for King of the New World Order. Edison, Jeremy, a dog named Checkers, Sarah Jeannie, Matthew, Dr. G, Neil, his nerdiness, Charles, Audrey Stoll Adler's Spot, Darren, Idris Arslani, and Bluefront, and the Lenina, Berkeley, Steven, Chad, Zombie Doc, Matt P, Chill, Adam, Chief Andy, Robert, Casey, Paul, Dustin, Brad, D Laser, Nick, Just Another Pilot, Middle-Aged Mike, Utah, Jimmy, Montana, the Jen, Alo, D, Really, Craig, and Andrew. If you want your name read on the show, one place to do it. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Thank you. And that's it. That's it for this week. Thank you guys for joining us for another election year week. Next week, we're going to have a little bit more of a sense And I have a feeling that the narrative moving into next week is Kamala the favorite. You look at some of these polls that are coming in, I think that they're going to start to move, at least nationally, some of these aggregators. You're going to get a lot of Trump under fire. It's going to get dicey. It's going to get messy. It's going to get chaotic. And we're going to get Kamala as vice president. Now, at some point, she's got to take some kind of risk. How long will she be able to coast? That's the question. And we'll be there to answer it. Till next time, this is your old pal, Justin Robert Young, saying, some shows talk about politics, others talk about politics, and still more discuss politics, but this is the only show that has the gumption to talk about all three.